Chapter 1: A New Threat Emerges. Captain Elena Torres leaned forward in her seat, eyes narrowed on the unfamiliar blip hovering at the edge of her starship's radar. A rhythmic alarm pulsed through the bridge, casting a red glow over her crew's tense faces. Torres wasn't one for superstition, but something about this energy signature sent an unnatural chill through her, a chill that only deepened as the ship's computer struggled to categorize the object. "Still no ID?" she asked, her voice low and sharp. Lieutenant Malik, her navigator, squinted at his console, his fingers dancing over the controls. "No. Whatever it is, it's not any tech we've cataloged. Doesn't match any known friendly or hostile configurations. It's like it's just wrong." A murmur rippled through the bridge crew. The Starship Venture Asterisk had encountered its share of unknowns, but this felt different, ominous. Torres clenched her jaw, suppressing her own unease. "All right, let's go in slow. Full sensor scan. I want details." She turned to her chief engineer, Zoe Ramirez, who was already at her station, running diagnostics. "Shields are at full, Captain," Ramirez reported, her tone steady, though her fingers hovered over the controls with more urgency than usual. "If this turns sour, we'll be ready." A static hiss filled the air, and then, suddenly, a harsh, guttural voice crackled through the comm system. Malik stiffened, glancing back at Torres. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's not in any standard language. Patch it through." "Let's see what they want," Torres replied, her voice steady but tense. The alien transmission filled the room with sharp, discordant sounds that grated against human ears. Torres felt her heart quicken, and the bridge fell into a tense silence as the computer began its real-time translation. After several seconds, the mechanical voice finally produced an eerie, disjointed message: "Surrender. Compliance ensures survival. Resistance equals annihilation." Torres's mind raced. This was more than a chance encounter. This was an ultimatum. A flicker of anger sparked within her, momentarily driving out the fear. How dare they demand surrender without negotiation? "Lieutenant Malik, send back a response. Short and clear," she ordered. "This is Captain Elena Torres of the human vessel Venture. We are here on a peaceful mission and have no intention of submitting to aggression." "Who are you?" As Malik sent the transmission, Torres turned to Ramirez. "Run a systems check. Make sure our defenses are tight." "Yes, ma'am," Ramirez replied, her gaze hardening as she activated the ship's self-defense protocols. "If they want to fight, we're not making it easy." The silence that followed felt heavy, like the deep breath before a plunge. The bridge crew held still, eyes on their screens, waiting for a reply. Torres's hands rested on her armrests, knuckles white. Seconds ticked by, and then the alien voice returned. "Defiance futile. Humanity lacked the strength. Surrender or face extinction." A cold dread seeped into Torres's veins, but she kept her expression firm, refusing to let fear show. Instead, she turned back to Malik. "Prepare evasive maneuvers. We're not going to let them get the jump on us." Suddenly, a warning alarm blared. "Incoming fire!" Malik shouted as the screens flared red, displaying the alien vessel, a sleek, otherworldly construct of sharp angles and bioluminescent textures, charging an energy weapon directed at Venture. "Brace for impact!" Torres shouted as the Zyrax ship fired, sending a beam of blinding white energy toward them. Venture lurched as the shields absorbed the brunt of the blast, but sparks erupted from several panels, and the ship shuddered violently. "Shields down to 60%. Ramirez reported, her voice laced with urgency as she worked to reroute power. "That hit was off the charts. They're packing firepower we've never even theorized." Torres's mind raced as she calculated their options. The Zyrax were clearly superior in technology, and a direct fight would mean certain destruction. But retreat wasn't an option. Earth needed to know about this threat, and they were humanity's only eyes and ears in this sector. "Lieutenant Malik, plot a course for evasive action." "Ramirez, can you boost the shields any further?" she demanded. "Maybe for a few more rounds, but after that, we're toast," Ramirez muttered, sweat beading on her brow. Captain, if we're going to send a warning to Earth, we'd better do it now. Torres nodded, reaching over to activate the emergency comm to any listening outposts or human vessels. This is Captain Elena Torres of the Venture. We are under attack by an alien vessel of unknown origin. They possess advanced weaponry beyond anything we've encountered. Do not engage. Prepare for defensive action. Repeat, do not engage. Another blast rocked the ship, cutting off the transmission mid-message. Torres gritted her teeth, feeling the weight of her decision settle over her. Her crew's lives and humanity's safety hung in the balance. The Zyrax weren't here to negotiate. They were here to conquer. All right, let's show them what we're made of, Torres said, her voice steady as iron. We may not have their firepower, but we got something they'll never understand. Ramirez, reroute every ounce of power to shields and engines. Malik, get ready to pull every evasive trick in the book. The bridge crew worked in a blur of coordinated movement, each focused on their task. Torres felt a surge of pride despite the fear gnawing at her. They knew the odds, yet they held steady. As the Zyrax ship closed in, preparing for another blast, Torres locked eyes with her crew. We're going to make it out of this, she said with fierce determination. And when we do, Earth will know about the Zyrax. The Zyrax ship fired once more, a blinding flash engulfing the Venture. Torres gripped her seat, bracing for impact. Chapter 2. First Contact and a Fatal Decision. The Venture shuddered as another blast hit, its shields flickering, barely holding. Captain Elena Torres steadied herself against her seat, her eyes fixed on the Zyrax ship outside the viewports. Every second they held out felt like a miracle, yet the odds were closing in fast. Damage report. Torres called, her voice firm, even as anxiety prickled in her chest. Ramirez's voice crackled through the comm system. Shields at 25%, Captain. We're on borrowed time. If they hit us with another full blast, we're done. Torres inhaled, steadying herself. She couldn't show hesitation. Not now. Her crew needed her to be unshakable. Malik, status on that message to Earth? Lieutenant Malik, fingers moving swiftly over his console, shook his head. It got cut off mid-transmission, but I managed to send a partial distress signal. With luck, they got enough to know something's wrong. We just need to stay alive long enough for someone to answer it. A static-filled pause settled over the bridge, broken only by the faint hum of life support systems. Outside, the Zyrax ship hung in the void, a sinister presence against the backdrop of stars. What if help doesn't come? Malik asked, his voice a whisper, but full of a grim reality they all felt. Torres clenched her jaw. We don't give up. That's what? Ramirez's voice came back over the comm, low and urgent. Captain, I've got a workaround. It's risky as hell, but it might give us a few more minutes. I can reroute the shield energy to create a short burst. It'll disable us, but it might temporarily blind their systems if we time it right. Malik glanced back at Torres, his face pale. Captain, if it fails, we'll be dead in seconds if we don't try something, she replied. Her decision made, Torres hit the comm link. Ramirez, do it. Prep that burst and get ready to deploy it on my mark. Ramirez's reply was instant, her confidence bolstered by Torres's unyielding tone. Aye, Captain. Give me 10 seconds. They watched as the Zyrax ship maneuvered closer, its energy weapons primed, glowing an eerie shade of blue. Torres felt her pulse quicken as the hum of the alien weapon grew, vibrating through Venture's hull like a countdown to their last breath. 3 seconds, Ramirez said. 2. 1 ready. Now! Torres barked. The bridge lights dimmed as every ounce of power surged into the shields. The Venture lit up with a violent pulse, and Torres saw the Zyrax ship stagger in response, its targeting systems faltering. It worked. Malik breathed, a brief spark of relief crossing his face. Torres seized the moment. Bring engines to full and get us moving. We need to break free of their range while they're disoriented. Malik didn't hesitate. The Venture lurched forward, the stars streaking past the viewports as they raced away from the Zyrax. Torres held her breath. each second stretching as the distance between them grew. Then, just as quickly, the Zyrax ship regained control, pursuing them with relentless precision. "They're back online," Ramirez reported, her voice heavy with dread. Torres looked out at the alien vessel, a wave of hopelessness threatening to crash over her. But she couldn't let her crew see that. "Ramirez, any more tricks?" There was a pause before Ramirez answered, her voice tight. "Not unless you want me to try something desperate." Torres glanced at the exhausted faces around her. They were worn and battered, but still loyal, still determined. "Tell me," she said. "Self-destruct," Ramirez replied bluntly. "We rigged the core to overload. If we time it right, it could take them down. It's a one-way ticket, but it's something." Silence fell on the bridge as the weight of her words settled over the crew. Torres's gaze flicked between Malik and Ramirez, both of them standing there, fully aware of what this meant. She'd never expected her mission to end in sacrifice, but she also knew that facing down extinction was a responsibility they all shared. Malik broke the silence. "Captain, whatever you decide, I'm with you." Ramirez gave a resolute nod. "Same here. We knew the risks when we signed on." A surge of pride swelled in Torres's chest, momentarily dispelling her fear. "All right," she said, her voice steady. "Ramirez, start the preparations. But we'll keep it as a last resort. We still have to give Earth a fighting chance." Just then, a familiar static crackled over the comms. It was faint, broken, but unmistakably human. Venture *. This is Commander Brighton of the Galactic Vigil. We receive your distress call. Hold position. Reinforcements are en route. Relief hit Torres like a tidal wave. "Copy that, Commander Brighton," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. "We're holding out as best we can, but we're low on shields and defensive options. The Zyrax are unlike anything we've ever seen." Brighton's voice was full of quiet determination. "Understood. We'll do everything we can. Sit tight." The comm cut out, and Torres turned to her crew. A glimmer of hope now shone in their eyes. But the battle wasn't over yet. They still had to survive long enough for Brighton to reach them. Outside, the Zyrax ship loomed closer, and Torres knew it would take one more miracle to make it out alive. She gripped her console, her voice steady. "All stations, prepare for the next assault. We're not finished yet." The Zyrax ship fired another barrage, and Venture shuddered under the impact, the shields barely holding. Ramirez's strained voice came over the intercom. "Shields at 10%, Captain. We can't take another hit like that." Torres's mind raced, calculating their dwindling options. The self-destruct plan was still in place, but with Brighton's reinforcements on the way, the stakes had shifted. Now it was a matter of buying just a little more time. She locked eyes with Malik, his gaze resolute. "Let's pull every maneuver we've got," she ordered. "Ramirez, keep those shields patched up for as long as possible. We're going to hold out until reinforcements arrive." The bridge crew moved with renewed determination, knowing this was their final stand. The Zyrax vessel prepared to fire again, and Torres braced herself, every fiber of her being focused on holding their line. As the alien ship unleashed its next attack, the Venture took the hit head-on, the ship groaning under the force. Yet Torres held firm, refusing to yield. In the corner of her view screen, she caught sight of several faint blips, the reinforcements. They were close. So close. "Hold steady," Torres shouted. "Just a few more seconds." Chapter 3: The Fight for Survival. The Venture creaked under another blast, the bridge bathed in flashing red as sparks rained from overhead conduits. Captain Elena Torres could feel the weight of every second bearing down on them. Reinforcements were near, but each blow from the Zyrax vessel brought them closer to oblivion. "We're nearly out of time, Captain," Ramirez called out, her face tight with worry. "Shields are at 5%. Hull integrity's dropping. This next hit could break us." Torres nodded, clenching her jaw. Her mind raced, searching for any tactic, any maneuver to buy them just a little longer. "Ramirez, start rerouting auxiliary power. We're going to need every ounce of energy we can get." Lieutenant Malik's voice cut through the tension. "Captain, I'm picking up multiple signals. It's the reinforcements. The Galactic Vigil is leading the fleet, and they're charging into engagement range. A spark of hope surged through Torres, her heart pounding as she saw the faint outlines of Earth's vessels appear on the view screen. Relief flickered in her eyes, tempered by the brutal reality that they weren't out of danger yet. "Patch us through to Commander Brighton." Brighton's voice came over the comm, clear but edged with urgency. "Torres, hang on. We're engaging the Zyrax now. Brace yourselves." The comm link cut, and in the view screen, the Earth fleet's ships closed in, lasers streaking across the black expanse. Explosions burst around the Zyrax ship, and Torres felt a surge of pride at the sight of humanity fighting back. Commander Brighton wasn't lying, Malik murmured, eyes wide as he watched the coordinated assault. "They're giving it everything they've got." The bridge erupted in cheers as one of the Zyrax's weapons arrays exploded, sending shards of alien metal spinning into space. For a brief moment, hope felt tangible, close enough to hold. But the Zyrax ship retaliated with terrifying speed, firing on the Earth fleet with precision that belied its monstrous size. One by one, several Allied vessels were hit, spiraling away with trails of smoke and debris. Ramirez tightened her grip on her console, her expression fierce. "We can't let the fleet get picked apart. They came for us. We owe them more than to sit here and watch." Torres knew what Ramirez was suggesting, and she could feel her crew's anticipation. They were bruised and battered, but not broken. They had one last chance to make a stand, to shift the balance. "You're right. We're not sitting this out. Captain, shields are barely holding. We won't last another direct hit," Malik warned, his voice a mix of fear and resolve. Torres looked at each of her crew members in turn, their faces worn but steadfast. "Then we'll make this count. Ramirez, plot a course for the Zyrax. We're going in close." Ramirez's eyes widened, but she nodded, fingers flying over her console. "Aye, Captain. Course set. We're putting everything we've got into the engines." Torres gripped the armrests of her seat as the Venture lurched forward, accelerating toward the Zyrax ship. The closer they got, the more imposing the alien vessel appeared, its hull bristling with weapons, its dark surface absorbing the faint light of distant stars. But in the center of that darkness, Torres saw their target, a cluster of exposed power conduits just behind one of the damaged weapon arrays. "Malik, focus all remaining firepower on that cluster. If we can hit their power grid, we might be able to shut down their primary systems," she ordered. "Aye, Captain." Malik's hands moved over the controls with precision, his eyes narrowing as he took aim. "Brace for impact," Torres called, holding onto her console as the Venture closed in, shaking violently as the Zyrax ship fired another barrage. Sparks erupted around them, but they held their course, refusing to veer off. Malik fired, and a concentrated blast shot from the Venture's cannons, slamming into the Zyrax's power grid. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the Zyrax ship shuddered, and the lights on its hull flickered as a cascade of explosions rippled across its surface. "They're destabilizing," Ramirez shouted, her voice laced with excitement. "We've hit their core systems." Outside, the Earth fleet seized the opening, pouring everything they had into the exposed sections of the Zyrax ship. The alien vessel struggled, its remaining weapons firing erratically as if in desperation. The darkness that had felt so overwhelming only moments ago was now cracking, its invincibility shattered by a relentless human resistance. The bridge erupted in cheers, the weight of their survival finally breaking as they watched the Zyrax ship begin to break apart. The once ominous vessel now resembled a crumbling giant, its hull splintering in a beautiful, terrifying display. Torres's relief was interrupted by Malik, his face suddenly pale as he examined his console. "Captain, I'm picking up a massive energy surge from the Zyrax ship. They're preparing to self-destruct. At this range, we'll be caught in the blast." The bridge fell silent, the elation of victory fading into dread. Torres's mind raced. There was no time to escape, but she knew what needed to be done. "Ramirez, activate full reverse thrusters," she ordered, her voice steady. "Malik, patch a message through to the fleet. Tell them to fall back now." Her crew didn't hesitate. moving with the quiet precision of soldiers who'd prepared for the worst. Torres watched the screen, her heart pounding as the Zyrax ship continued to destabilize, its hull lighting up with internal explosions. "Captain, the fleet's pulling back," but Malik hesitated, meeting her gaze with unspoken words. He didn't need to say it. They both knew the venture was too close. They wouldn't escape in time. Torres took a steadying breath, her voice calm. "It's all right. We've done our part." The crew looked at her, a fierce pride in their eyes. In that moment, Torres felt the weight of her choice, the realization that their sacrifice might buy humanity a fighting chance. She straightened, lifting her chin as she watched the alien ship collapse in on itself, the energy building to a blinding crescendo. The comm crackled, and Commander Brighton's voice came through, raw with emotion. "Torres, Elena, your bravery won't be forgotten. We're pulling back to safety. Godspeed, Venture." With a final glance at her crew, Torres nodded, feeling a bittersweet peace settle over her. "It's been an honor," she said softly. In the last moments, as the Zyrax ship's energy core detonated, the Venture was bathed in light of flash that marked the end of a battle, the legacy of a crew that refused to surrender. Chapter 4: A New Dawn. The dim glow of morning light filtered through the windows of the command center aboard the Galactic Vigil, casting an eerie silence over the crew. In the aftermath of the battle, the victory felt hollow, every glance at the view screen a painful reminder of those they had lost. The smoldering wreckage of the Zyrax ship still floated in the distance, and near it, the remains of the Venture, a testament to their courage and ultimate sacrifice. Commander Brighton stood, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the screen in solemn reflection. The loss of Captain Elena Torres and her crew weighed heavily on him. They had held the line with unmatched bravery, giving the rest of humanity's forces the chance to strike back and claim victory. But the victory had come at a cost none of them could ignore. "Sir," Lieutenant Danner's voice broke the silence, barely above a whisper, as if afraid to disturb the somber mood. "We're receiving messages from Earth. Civilians, families, they're asking about the Venture and her crew." Brighton took a steadying breath, closing his eyes for a moment to gather his thoughts. He had expected this. He knew they would have to answer for those lost. "Acknowledge their messages, Danner. Let them know we'll send word as soon as we can. They deserve the truth." Brighton's voice cracked slightly, and he cleared his throat, forcing himself to remain steady. He had been through battles, seen friends fall, but this loss stung sharper. Torres and her team had been family to him, family to them all. Their sacrifice demanded remembrance, not just in the records of war, but in the hearts of every person who would survive because of their bravery. Lieutenant Jenkins, who had been silent at the communication panel, turned, her expression unreadable. "Commander, I'm picking up a faint signal near the wreckage. It's weak, but it's there." Brighton's head snapped up, eyes narrowing with hope. "A signal? Is it from the Venture?" Jenkins leaned in, her fingers flying over the console as she filtered through static and distortion. "Yes, sir. It's a distress beacon, intermittent, but it's there. It could mean there are survivors." The crew around him perked up, the air in the command center suddenly charged with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Brighton felt his heart thud faster, his mind racing. If there was even the faintest chance of rescuing someone from the Venture, they had to take it. "Danner, prepare a shuttle for immediate launch." "I'll lead the search myself," Brighton ordered, his voice resolute. The tone brooked no argument, and Danner simply nodded, moving quickly to carry out the command. Brighton paused, feeling the weight of responsibility. He had led countless missions, but none had felt as vital as this one. As he stepped into the shuttle bay, his mind was filled with images of Torres and her crew, their courage, their determination. They had fought not for glory, but to protect those they loved, and now it was his turn to bring them home, one way or another. Minutes later, Brighton and his small team were strapped into the shuttle, racing through the silent void toward the debris field. As they approached the shattered remains of the Venture, the realization of the devastation settled in. The once proud ship was fractured, hull torn apart by the Zyrax's final attack. Floating metal fragments spun slowly in space, the aftermath of the desperate struggle that had saved them all. "Commander, I'm locking onto the beacon. It's coming from one of the lower decks. Most of the ship's structure is gone, but this section looks like it's maintained a seal," Jenkins reported, her voice laced with hope and trepidation. The shuttle docked as close as possible, and Brighton led the team through the airlock, lights piercing the darkness of the ship's remains. Every step echoed in the silence, a reminder of the emptiness left behind. As they advanced, they passed flickering consoles, the charred remnants of workstations, and personal effects strewn about, memories of lives cut short. Finally, they reached the source of the beacon. A single room, its doors partially crumpled inward but still sealed enough to hold pressure. Brighton motioned to his team, and together they pried the doors open, revealing the dimly lit space inside. "Over here," one of the crew members shouted, shining a light on a figure slumped against the wall. It was Ramirez, her face pale but alive. She looked up, blinking against the brightness, and a weak smile crossed her face. "Commander, you actually came?" Brighton crouched beside her, his own expression softening with relief. "We thought we'd lost you, Ramirez. Is anyone else here?" Ramirez's eyes filled with sorrow as she shook her head. "Most of us didn't make it. Captain Torres, she was with us until the end. She stayed with the ship to make sure we all got a chance." Brighton's throat tightened, and he placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You did her proud, Ramirez. You all did." They worked quickly to stabilize her and help her to her feet, guiding her back through the broken corridors of the Venture. The silence felt heavier now, knowing that for every survivor they found, many others would never return. But as they made their way back to the shuttle, Brighton felt a sense of closure. Torres and her crew had held the line, and now they would be remembered not just as soldiers, but as heroes. As the shuttle pulled away, Ramirez looked back at the shattered remains of the Venture. She took a deep, shuddering breath. She would have loved to see Earth again, she murmured, voice thick with grief. Brighton nodded solemnly. "In a way, she will. She lives on in all of us, in everyone who will know her story." The shuttle carried them back to the Galactic Vigil, the weight of what they had endured tempered by a renewed sense of purpose. Brighton knew they would carry the memory of the Venture as sacrifice with them in every battle, a reminder of the cost of survival, of the courage it took to stand against impossible odds. As they entered the ship, Brighton turned to his crew, voice steady and resolute. "The Venture gave us a chance to keep fighting. We'll honor their memory by finishing this war, for them, and for everyone back home." The bridge fell silent once more, the finality of his words settling over the crew like a pledge. The Earth's forces had won a battle, but the war continued, and they would press on, carrying the legacy of those who had given everything. The Galactic Vigil continued its journey, but in each of their hearts, a spark of hope burned brighter, a tribute to the spirit of humanity, one that could never be extinguished.